Hi, my name's Nike Takeshi. I'm a professional musician, composer, music producer, and I'm also a self-taught theoretical physicist. And I'm doing this video or series of videos to present my theory of everything, which is, it's one of the great unsolved things in theoretical physics, and I have a theory of everything to share. So here's how I'm going to do this. This is like an introduction, and then I'm going to switch to recording myself writing out all the equations, the physics calculus equations that I got for the first 5 parts of the theory out of 9. And then after that part, I'm going to just come back here and talk about the other 4 parts because there's no mathematic stuff involved with those. So I've already got my notes all written out in a couple of notebooks, and I'm going to basically rewrite them on a blank sheet of paper for you because I don't want it to look like I'm just pointing to a bunch of, messy stuff from my old notes. So I'm gonna have those with me, and then I'm going to rewrite them in a blank sheet of paper. All right, so let's get this started. See, this is my old notes that I got right here. I'm going to start rewriting it, and I'll explain it as I go. So the first part of the theory is the theory of everything in integral calculus. And integral calculus, I'm not going to give like a crash course on calculus, but it's basically about like functions, and functions are basically they describe infinite change happening in a system, because calculus is the study of infinite change, just to say that briefly. And by the way, I'm doing this on the fly. I'm not going to make this into something where I rehearse it 100 times and do 100 takes. I might one day decide to do it in like a more formal setting, or I'll just do this over to make it look neater or something, whatever. For now, this is just how I'm going to start by presenting it. So here we go. So part 1 of the theory, integral calculus. The basic theory, I write it like this. Well, here, function A equals, A means all, okay? All equals O. O means omniverse. The omniverse is everything outside the universe that encompasses all possible dimensions, everything that exists. So function A equals O to the power of, it's O times negative infinity to the power of infinity. Now, let me explain what this actually means. So, the theory states that there's a total of 6 dimensions. Well, I'm not saying that they're living beings are living in 6 dimensions. Bear with me. So, for this system that I'm going to describe to be existent, there have to be 6 dimensions, and they go like this. Dimension 6 is the highest one, and my theory is that they call it a singularity, but all of existence started with an infinitely small point, something which is infinitesimal, meaning infinitely small. And so this part where I say negative infinity to the power of infinity, that infinitely small point multiplies itself from that singularity. And then from that, it spawns the rest of existence. So it goes like this. The 6 dimensions, we got 6, 5, 4, 3, and then 2, 1, and then 0. Now let me explain how all these dimensions work. I already explained the 6th dimension. It's an infinitely small point repeating, multiplying itself into infinity. So then, well, let me explain. 0 dimensions means an infinitely small point. 1 dimension is if you had, well, you know what 2 dimensions is probably. And I'm not saying that anything lives in a second or first dimensional plane, but these are theoretical physics concepts. So a second dimension is, you know, like you see in a cartoon where there's, you know, 2 dimensions where there is no depth. The depth is infinitely small. So it's like, you know, 2 dimensions. 1 dimension is like an infinitely thin line. It's got length, but the width and depth are infinitely small. So then you got the 3rd dimension, which you probably know what that is. That's where we live. And it has length and width and depth. Now, 4th dimension has been talked about by theoretical physicists before. And if you look at Minkowski space, it's sort of, it displays a plane where space is sort of infinite. There's no physical limitations to space. And what I say is if space is infinite, then in that sense, there's no space at all because there's no constraints. Like, you know, space itself is the constraint by which there is a limitation of space. You can only go so far. There can only be so much movement before you reach a boundary. That's when there's 3 dimensions. If there's 4 dimensions, then that boundaries are moved. And that would be the 4th dimension. Now, I'm getting this from, at this point, I'm going to be getting into Einstein's general relativity, which, without getting too far into that, basically Einstein's general relativity, part of that indicated that space and time are one unified phenomenon in the 3rd dimension. And they are what we see as gravity is actually the curvature of space-time. Without getting too far into the theory of relativity, I still need to study it more myself. I have a book on it. I've read a lot about special relativity, and I still have a ways to go reading into it and getting to the part about general relativity. But regardless, I know this much about it. And my theory indicates that when you get to the 4th dimension, when you remove the boundary of space, and then in the 4th dimension, you still have time, but you don't have space anymore. Or in other words, space is infinite. If you remove time, then you get to the 5th dimension, where space and time are infinite. And it's like a plane from which like anything can sort of be created. You know, let's say hypothetically it was possible to like look at the 3rd dimension from the 5th dimension, then you'd be able to look at the future or the past, and just like how we can look from, like, you know, left to right and front to back, things like that. And then the idea is that the 6th dimension would be the highest one necessary, because once you remove any further constraints beyond that, then you just have an open book for, like, you know, anything can be created. That's just, you know, the plane from which this whole system would be created from scratch. Just the idea of an omniverse, a thing. That's where it just spawns from. And that's where the laws of physics would all have, you know, been conceived from. And then everything else sort of trickles down from that. So that's the basic idea. And let me get into the second part now.